justifies it, but I also want to challenge how we make sense of Mike Brown and Darren Wilson. Because when Darren Wilson kills Mike Brown, we're outraged. And then some of us got less outraged when we saw that video. That's a whole other way that we think about nobody. And some people are like, yo, we ready to march, we ready to protest. Then y'all saw the video of Mike Brown pushing the store owner. And a whole bunch of black folk, particularly the middle class, bougie sort of black folk that I know. One person said to me, oh, I thought we had a clean case, now we don't. And that's a problem. We have to complicate how we understand this and resist the kind of respectability politics that over-determines how we respond to acts of state violence. Yeah, Mike Brown wasn't perfect, but you don't have to be perfect to survive an interaction with the police. No, you shouldn't steal cigarillos. I'm just saying, right? You shouldn't steal cigarettes from a store. However, that's not a capital crime. He should have been perhaps he should have made better choices as he's walking down toward Canfield Green. Absolutely. But Darren Wilson also has to make some different choices. But too often we allow our understanding of what black people are supposed to look like, how they're supposed to comport themselves, how they're supposed to position themselves to be the predicate for how we respond. And the problem is, one, that itself is an unethical and immoral posture to take. You shouldn't have to be that good to survive. But second, it empirically just doesn't work. Eric Garner doesn't run. In fact, he said this stops today. They choke him out. Walter Scott doesn't have no weapons. He runs. They shoot him in the back. Trayvon's pants were pulled up. They still kill him. So instead of allowing the public to rummage through our records and find out whether we shared our toys in first grade or whether we had weed in our system or whatever we did or didn't do in the past to decide that we're worthy of death, we have to defend ourselves and our community at all costs simply because we are worth protecting, because we are not nobody. But on a broader level, even if all cops were warm and fuzzy, it doesn't change the fact that there are policing practices that are exploitative to the people. So in Ferguson, you have 20,000 people, and 16,000 people in Ferguson have warrants. I'm gonna say that again because it sounds crazy. Like y'all might think I made this shit up, right? That's why I endnoted and footnoted everything. Because you got to look this: 20,000 people, and 16,000 of them have some form of warrant, mostly for things like traffic tickets and unpaid tickets. But it becomes another way to stop. It becomes a pretext for stopping people, a pretext for investigating people, and it also becomes a profit-making machine for the city itself, which has itself been exploited and liquidated. So it's not just the problem of corrupt cops, although there's a problem with corrupt cops in Ferguson. It's also the fact that there's a broader economic infrastructure that doesn't work. We can't disconnect the policing problem from the economic problem of that. But we also, just my last point of this, can't romanticize black leadership because people say, well, if black cops were doing it, if we could just change, if we could have new cops in Ferguson, if we could have darker cops and a black city council, we'd have a different situation. But then you go to Baltimore, where the mayor is black, the police are black, everybody black, and the outcome is the same. We did not march to integrate police departments so we could get beat by black cops. The point of radical change is not to change drivers, it's to change directions. So if you got an Obama at the top or an Eric Holder in the Justice Department or Loretta Lynch in the Justice Department, that doesn't matter if the fundamental structure has not changed. And part of what I'm getting at in this book is that the structures themselves are so deeply entrenched that we have to reimagine all of that. And so the public good then gets privatized. And then in Flint, what we saw was the result of that privatization. Even water's getting privatized. And then when we found lead in the water, the response to lead in the water was to hire, and also the fact that the town was financially insolvent, was to hire what? An emergency manager. The emergency manager is like a private official. The emergency manager is not like a mayor or a governor who's accountable to who? The public. They ain't accountable, they don't get voted in or voted out. So now you got an emergency manager that's trying to be efficient, i.e. save money, and saving money means finding the cheapest water anywhere you can get it. And the cheapest water, guess what, had lead in it. And when they found out it had lead in it, and even Detroit was like, this is irresponsible. Now, you know some shit is irresponsible when Detroit, the home of Kwame Kilpatrick, was like, yo, son, yo, we can't even do. Detroit called Flint and was like, yo, we'll give you the water. They said no. You got kids popping up. the amount of lead that's supposed to be in water is something like, was it 3 BPMs, 4 BPMs? They were drops, they were big chunks of water, had like thousands. And it's a single thing of water. The water was so bad that the auto plant couldn't use the water anymore because it was rusting out the cars. But they're giving them to little babies. That's state violence. That's tragic. And it took a year to get any kind of response, and we still don't know what the long-term effects of this will be. So I ended the book in Flint because I wanted us to understand state violence in a more robust way. When black people go to jail because we're not on the jury, that's something that we can repair. Part of how you can repair that is by being on the jury. How you can be on the jury is by being registered to vote. So in some ways, I want you registered to vote as much so you can vote for the president as you are so you can be on this jury so that you can give somebody a fair trial. And sometimes, nullify. Sometimes nullify. That's very important. Because sometimes the system is broken and it doesn't fit within the logic of the system. It's morally correct, but it doesn't fit within legal ethics. But you as a juror can say, this is wrong. This is the history of the prison. I talk about this in chapter 5. There was a time when the punishments were so severe that jurors wouldn't even convict, not because they didn't think the person did it, but because they didn't want them going to jail for so damn long. Because it was, or getting killed or whatever the punishment was. So you can nullify. That's number one. So vote. Register to vote, be on juries. To your point about prosecutors and plea deals, 94% of state cases get pled out. This is all in chapter 3. 97% of federal cases get pled out. Part of what that does is it creates, it's efficient, it fits within market logic, which is the argument I make. It's a neoliberal project itself. So what happens is, people often plead out for things they didn't do, because they think it's their best option. Part of what gets denied, part of what gets blocked in this is not just a public trial. Plea deals are supposed to be a part of the system. Now they have become the system. And so what you end up with too often is prosecutors and defense attorneys operating together rather than separately. The adversarial relationship operates in spirit, but not as a practical matter. When you have all this stuff happening, what you end up with is people who get underserved. And then you combine that with, in some states, these contract attorneys who now have a bunch of cases. You might have a lawyer who's representing 400 people at one time. And because they get a flat fee to represent everybody, the money gets made by what? By getting through the case as quickly as possible. Because you get the same amount whether you investigate somebody or not, whether you hire a private investigator or not, whether you do extra research or not. So you getting through the cases faster and you're not spending as much money because you want to save your money. So market logic is efficient, but it's not good for the defendant. So we have a system of pleas rather than a system of justice. And then we have prosecutors and public defenders who work so hard, but they're underpaid and understaffed. So then the labor gets outsourced. That becomes a problem. So we have to reimagine the system again and invest in a public defense system for the public so that people can actually get a quality defense, so that they're not overworked, and so that people get an idea of what justice is. That's what we have to do. And the analysis says that the system's not broken, it's working the way it's supposed to. So instead of saying the system is broken, let's make it work, we should say the system is working, let's break it. And I decided to recommit myself to breaking this system. And that's what I hope we all do. I hope we all join organizations. We all commit to struggling. We all commit to working together. We all commit to imagining that world that is not yet in whatever way we need to do it so that we can break this system and finally get justice and affirm that these people who are called nobody are actually somebody and that they will get justice. Anyway, thank you all.